Step back, puts up the three, got hit, shot's good, and one! James Harden double team, and a chance for a 4-point play.
Okay, welcome back to the DC Pod. I am Christian, joined as always by Dallas diehard Darcy, where we cover all things basketball. Now, we are fresh off of game 4, so we're recording this late afternoon on Thursday, the 15th of July. And Darcy, have we just witnessed history in this game 4? Because I think Devin Booker's the first player in finals history to have 40 points and about 10 fouls.
He got away with a little bit more than you would think. Definitely had at least 7. That no call was unbelievable, but that was the only thing stopping him because he was on a complete tear, looking like he was going to take over and go finals MVP mode.
Well, I can confirm Adam Silver was in the building for that game. You would have potentially, if you watched any of the pregame stuff, you saw he was on the countdown show. And so he was obviously in Pfizer Forum. Any potential he could see the trend of how this was going, and he tapped someone to go speak to the refs to say, like, we need Book in here. Like, we don't want him fouling out.
Well, I thought that Booker in particular, I thought all of his fouls were fouls. I don't think he necessarily had anything to complain about, even up to that last one that wasn't called. I thought the critical call that was a foul on him was that almost clear path foul when he just grabbed Giannis in the second quarter. That gave him a third foul in the second quarter, completely unnecessary. When you're that important to your team, you just can't give away fouls like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. So that probably leads us into obviously today's game, and it makes sense to touch on that before looking back at game 3. From the Phoenix side of things, other than Booker obviously having a pretty ridiculous performance, I can't really get past just how sloppy they were. Like, that was like, I don't know the official numbers, but the turnovers were obviously heavily in Milwaukee's favor. Did they even turn the ball over 4 or 5 times? And what were Phoenix 15 plus? So I don't know the exact numbers, but it just felt like Phoenix continuously kicked themselves and shot themselves in the foot with just pretty sloppy play. You'd probably say even if they had 12 turnovers, had 5 less, that'd be in a good shot to close out that game, because the momentum was in their favor to start the 4th.
17-5. So that's 12 extra possessions. So that's a significant margin in a playoff scenario. And some credit has to go to Milwaukee. For only 5 turnovers, that's being extremely tight with it. And that kind of only amplified just how costly those turnovers were. And I guess what we spoke about at the beginning of the series, what I thought was a big key was which team could get in transition, because we're looking at the best 2 defensive teams in the playoffs so far. And those turnovers, a lot of them were live ball turnovers leading to transition opportunities for Milwaukee. And not only did they turn some of those into easy dunks or easy open shots, they drew fouls off those as well, which ultimately put Phoenix under more pressure. So, that the old saying sometimes that, good defense for you at times is having a solid offense and not turning the ball over, not shooting yourself in the foot in that way. So it's kind of a double whammy what happened to Phoenix today.
Yeah, definitely. And I thought it's another kind of puzzling. It happened in game 2, didn't it? With Ayton in particular, where it just seemed like he was so out of sync and out of rhythm. And it kind of felt that way again today. Look, he was a little bit better. I know he had some decent assist numbers and he was rebounding the ball well. And, kind of polar opposite, I suppose, in terms of scoring to how he was in game 3, because even though he got in foul trouble, which we'll touch on, he was scoring the ball at will to start the game. He was really Phoenix's main offense in that first half of game 3 in particular. But how do you sort of assess his performance today? Were you happy with how he played?
I was happy with his effort. Obviously, the commanding 16 defensive rebounds is ultimately what he does. And he set some really good screens, particularly to get Booker open. But I mentioned after game 2 that at times he looked a bit risky as an option on the roll, and the pick and roll. At times he fumbled the ball. At times he didn't look 100% certain of scoring over some long and tough defense. And there's no doubt he hasn't come up against a defense as long and as strong as what Milwaukee are throwing at him. So I think at times in the series, it feels like if he misses one of those one-on-ones on the block against someone or on a screen and roll situation, he misses the finish at the rim, feels like he doesn't get the ball or he doesn't get involved in the offense again for almost 10 minutes. So you feel like he really needs to get on a roll and score a few buckets in a row for that part of Phoenix offense to really help open up. And it just didn't in either of these two games. Obviously, big key, huge key in the third game was his foul trouble, getting 3 in the first half, and then ended up, picking up 4 and then picking up 5 in the fourth. So he couldn't get any momentum after his strong start in game 3. And in this game, even though Giannis wasn't completely, dominant from the start of the game, Ayton kind of did his job without becoming any kind of explosive offensive player. And there's no doubt that that Booker was put an amazing scoring performance on in this game. And for me, the man who didn't really stand out scoring was Chris Paul. He couldn't get it going.
So it was polar opposites really for CP3 and Book. It was, they almost took turns, right? It was game 3. It was Book that couldn't buy a basket. And you saw him really settle for outside jumpers. I think he was 1 of 7 from deep and barely got to the free throw line. And then today he was obviously unbelievable and made the right adjustments and sort of got back to his mid-range game. But CP3 I thought he was okay in game 3 in particular. And he still shot the ball okay. And despite, the team's struggles really with, especially once, as you sort of said, once Ayton went out with foul trouble, and it was today where he really kind of let down the team. So I thought he would come out with an aggressive mindset and, really look to score the ball. And I know in that first quarter in particular, whenever CP, he only plays the first 6 minutes before Payne comes in, and then CP, starts the second quarter with some of the backup guys. But so I was almost certain he would come in with a score first mentality, and he didn't really seem to do that. And he was kind of just, even his playmaking wasn't really there. Some really uncharacteristic stuff of what we've seen from this playoffs anyway. I know in the past you can potentially look to CP not delivering in big moments, but beyond that, game 7 against the Spurs, the game winner with the Clippers, obviously that's a big moment that stands out. But for the most part, people have known CP's postseason career as someone who's always seemed to fall short. And it's a shame that you kind of got a little bit of those vibes for this game in particular, because really Booker only needed 15 points from CP. I think CP had 10 in the end, but obviously it ended up being a 6-point game, and just crucial stretches. It was really reliant on Booker. And for the most part, it almost seemed Cam Johnson was Robin for if Booker was Batman, it was Cam Johnson doing his best to chip in with a bit of scoring. And obviously the thing that kind of sums up the game is, I don't know what the score was at the time, but obviously CP3 had the ball and he was operating in a pick and roll, and he sort of gets around the screen. And then did he fall or did Giannis strip him? Either way, it was a pretty crucial turnover. And that's probably summed up CP's game, because I think he had 4 or 5 turnovers in this game. And last game he had 4 turnovers. And was it game 2? He had 6 turnovers. So been a little bit, other than the game 1, like here I am, balled out 30 plus points. He's been a little bit disappointing, and it's surprising that the turnovers of this has been the thing that's really let him down. How do you feel about the point guard supposedly?
It definitely wasn't his best game, that's for sure. Yeah. I think if you're Phoenix, you can't necessarily be too down on the performance, but I think you let one slip, I think, and that's where it comes down to CP3. And you mentioned how, he or anyone else couldn't go with Booker, couldn't give him that extra scorer to keep them going, to put them over the edge, because they held the lead for a long time in this game. And there's definitely an element of they let a good opportunity. Well, they let an amazing game from Devin Booker, go by the wayside, and they didn't come back with the victory. On the other hand, the Bucks really held on. They came good at the end, and they weren't necessarily shooting the ball very well. Guys like, Holiday did not shoot the ball well in this game. Giannis looked quite tired at the beginning. I thought overall from the beginning, when this can lead into what I think about CP3's game, that the Bucks looked tired and they weren't running around the court quickly on offense. They weren't zinging the ball around. They were a bit stagnant and seemed to settle for a few jump shots. And I think particularly that ended up being Holiday putting up a lot of early shots. I think he was 0 for 5 to start the game, not getting anywhere near as good a looks as they were getting, with the energy and the focus that they started the game with in game 3. But on the flip side, CP3, he didn't look for his shot, I didn't think, at the beginning of the game. He focused on getting other guys involved, and probably at the expense of getting himself into a rhythm, because he missed a couple of uncharacteristic, open shots, a couple of mid-ranges that went around the rim and out, one floater that was basically uncontested in the lane that he missed, that I couldn't believe he missed that one. And by that stage, you could kind of tell that he was never really going to be there in the fourth quarter, and you weren't going to be able to rely on him. But the truth is, they didn't need that in this game because of the way that Booker was playing. If it wasn't for the foul trouble, Booker looked like the best player in the game. And I think if you're a Phoenix fan, you're looking at this and you're thinking, there is a path for us to win this championship because we've got potentially the best player on the floor when Booker is playing like he played today. It's a shame that they didn't go on and win this, because he was shooting out of his mind. What was he, 17 of 26? He was shooting 60% from the field. And to your point before about the difficulty of shots that he was taking, not a lot of difference between the shots that he took in game 3 and these shots in game 4. He just really got into a really nice groove. And when he's in that groove, the way that he's able to elevate off the floor and shoot either off the backboard in the mid-range or curling off of a screen, it's really, really difficult to stop, and you saw PJ Tucker foul him, I think 2 or 3 occasions trying to block his shot. So overall, Phoenix, there's definitely a way for them to win this championship. There is a way. And I'm sorry to say, but I think it's Devin Booker's got to be the guy. You obviously need a much better performance from CP3, but I think if you're going to go all the way and win it, the guy who can be the MVP and is the biggest matchup nightmare is Booker.
Well, you have it right there with answering your own sort of question with you were speaking about before. It looks like Giannis is getting tired, right? So if there's sort of an opportunity, you can see it's Giannis is fatiguing. He's clearly couldn't replicate what he was able to do in game 2 and game 3. So if you're the Suns, that's where now, and again, it comes back to not being able to close out today and put the foot on the throat and really look to finish things off in 5 and close things out back home, because now the pressure's kind of back on Phoenix, because it's as much as it's, home court, and similar to what you spoke about in our previous pods, Das, where, Dallas and the Clippers down to a 3-game series, let's see who's the best team. Let's see who can, get first to 2. We're now in that same situation. And it definitely feels, as you say, that Phoenix probably blew it. Given not only the turnover discrepancy, but the offensive rebounds. Like, how many did they give up? Like, it seemed like Milwaukee were always, okay, there's the number. So you're not doing yourself any justice when you can't hold teams to, to one shot, especially when they've got so much pressure they can kind of put on the rim with a Giannis. And we kind of haven't spoken about him much, but the guy who was able to match it with Booker, and a key reason as to why Milwaukee were able to at least be in a position to win is the guy we've spoken about often on this pod as being underrated, and that's Chris Middleton. And he finally came to play. And it's kind of almost carbon copy of, again, what happened in Brooklyn, how, he was he was good in game 1 against Phoenix. So it's not really fair to say he did the same thing against Brooklyn in 1 and 2. But, game 2, you could say he wasn't there when they really needed him. I thought game 3, look, he was better. I can't say he was as bad as he was in game 2, but he still ended on 18 points. And it was more the fact that Giannis was dominant and you got great play out of Drew. I thought he was better scoring the ball. But today, like that's the Chris Middleton game for me. Like, you talk about Booker, agreed. Like Middleton closed for them down the stretch, and just a healthy dose of Giannis and Middleton pick and rolls that Phoenix obviously struggled to defend, because it seemed like they weren't willing to give up the Giannis paint touches, and that obviously afforded Middleton to just get a little bit more space than what he's probably been accustomed to for most of this series. And I think that's credit to Giannis with how he's been playing. How often have you seen him be a screener? And how often, has that led to a really good shot, if it's not for him, but for the team? So that in itself is a bit of sacrifice that you kind of love to see, because not many superstar guys are willing to literally just, screen and roll for, I don't know how many times he set a screen today, 30, 40. He did it so much. And I think it's kind of taking away from the Middleton point, because he was excellent in the mid-range, and He is a bit of a streaky shooter, but when he's on, there's nothing better. I've spoken about it, how, reminds me so much of Paul George, just how smooth he can be when his shot is on fire, because he does play like like he's in cruise control the whole time, and that's what kind of makes the scoring nights like this really impressive, because it just looks effortless. How do you sum up the Middleton performance today? Because did he have 40 in the end, or if he didn't, he was close to it?
He had 40 on 45% shooting, hit a few free throws at the end to get in there. You're right. He was absolutely awesome. He hit timely shots earlier in the game where they were trailing. It was a 6-8 point lead, and he hit a big one to bring it back to 5. Or, a big momentum play was done by Phoenix. Drew Holiday really struggled early to make shots. Middleton kept them afloat. And we talked about Giannis and how he necessarily wasn't being forceful in getting his shots up. Middleton was being forceful this whole game. He was taking guys off the dribble, and he wasn't just picking up open shots when they came. He was really attacking that pick and roll and forcing DeAndre Ayton to make a decision. And there was a couple of times where he caught Ayton right out, where he came so hard off the screen, really great screen set by Giannis. Giannis is rolling a million miles an hour, and Ayton just can't get there to contest that mid-range jump shot. And you just knew once he was in that rhythm, you could feel it. He hadn't really felt that from Middleton in the whole series. When he got into that rhythm where he's open, that one's automatic. He was automatic at times in this game. And I suppose the biggest point in the game for me was, with 2 minutes to go, the scores had evened right up, and it was there for the taking for either team. Booker was somehow able to stay on the floor after that 6th foul that wasn't called, but Giannis made 2 crucial plays with 2 minutes to go. One, he drove in against Jay Crowder, and it looked like, from my perspective, it looked like it was a jump ball. It looked like Crowder played pretty good D, but they ended up calling it a foul, and the sideline out of bounds. They run a nice inbound play to get Middleton off the pick and roll of Giannis, gets into the middle of the key, hits an automatic jump shot. All of a sudden, they take the lead. The pressure's all on Phoenix. Next possession, Giannis gets downhill, takes Mikal Bridges off the dribble, probably a blocking foul as well. Bridges is moving backwards, moving sideways, takes that contact. Not a lot more he could do, but Giannis gets that call. So now you could say maybe we're getting a little bit of home cooking for Milwaukee there, and that's stuff we touched on with Adam Silver potentially, wanting this game to go further. But Giannis put the onus on the refs to make that call. And to be fair, he's probably earned those calls against these smaller players. So, and Middleton was the guy who was able to capitalize. They won the extra possession, and in the half court, you talked about the role from Giannis. It was deadly. I think ultimately in the fourth quarter in clutch situations, that is their best offense. Utilizing Giannis and his ability to set big screens, get him rolling towards the basket. If you can either get him the ball moving towards the hoop, that's great. Often he's going to draw fouls, but it also will open up the space for shooters on the wing, because you must have help with Giannis rolling to the hoop. So that's when it brings in guys like PJ Tucker and Pat Connaughton, who was absolutely huge in the game today. He played extended minutes with Lopez getting a couple of early fouls. He ends up a plus 21 in such a tight game where they were losing for so much of it. A big credit to him and to Coach Bud for really trusting that small lineup, and for it to be so effective has a lot to do with, I thought Connaughton, basically all of his 3-point shots felt like huge momentum shots. Like the Milwaukee were rolling, and then they get it to him open, and if he nails it, the place goes crazy. And they did on 2 separate occasions. So he also came up with some big rebounds as well. Him and Tucker did a great job on the offensive glass. I think Connaughton had 9. So big performance from those guys, and that's just all of the mixture of Milwaukee doing what it took to get this game done. As slow as they looked at the beginning, they got an awesome game out of Middleton. Even the struggle game from Drew, I thought Holiday did an exceptional job. And I suppose you take the totality of the first 4 games, all the effort that he's put into pressuring CP full court, trying to make him dribble 20, 30 times before he gets a shot off in a possession. Eventually that wears you down. And I suppose in this game, that's what it looked like from CP. There was definitely some uncharacteristic loose dribbling with the ball that you never see from him. Fumbled it a couple of times. You mentioned that key player where Giannis stripped it off him. So, even though not absolutely everyone shot the ball well for Milwaukee, they got contributions across the board, and it was enough to get the win. And huge credit to them. And I think you're right that the momentum and the pressure comes right back on Phoenix. What do you think the key is for Phoenix to win this next game at home?
Can they get some of their role guys going again? Like, I think we
Where's
spoke
Mikal
about
Bridges?
where is he? Everyone was on him after his game 2, and look, he was great game 2, but game 3, 4 points today, 7 points. Like, I think they're going to need more out of that wing spot because if Aiton's performance is going to be up and down in terms of scoring, it's what did you get today outside of CP and Book? It was obviously Cam Johnson that we spoke about, but did you get much out of? Well, Crowder was okay, but I mean, he was fortunate. He got some good calls for the free throw line, and
he ends up 3 for 10 from 3. So he hit a couple, but in the end, he's just kind of chucking it up because they don't have much else offensively. I liked what I saw from Campaign. I thought he did some really nice things and looked dangerous getting to the basket. But you look up at the box score, and he only ends up with 9. So it doesn't affect the game as much maybe as I thought he did. And the truth is that you need more scoring, to go along with. Aiton only ends up with 6 points. So he was efficient and rebounded well, but where's the scoring going to come from? If CP doesn't get it done and Bridges, is kind of showing us that he can really only be that complementary scorer, I don't really know where else they can go. They just need everyone to try to shoot and play better. You look at their overall 3-point percentage of 7 for 23. That's not really a formula for a Phoenix team to get a win.
No. So you'd probably just expect them to shoot the ball better at being back at home for, at least the next 2 out of the 3. So, yeah, we'll have to see. I think personally it's got to be a little bit more from the role players. Look, everything we've seen from CP3 this postseason would indicate that game 5, he's going to be the absolute man. He's going to feel pretty shit about the fact that they let this one go, and because for all the reasons we mentioned, and I can imagine Booker will probably feel the onus to continue to score the ball, because I think from a game like this, you just take confidence. It's kind of like, it's not now you go back home and Booker goes, okay, we're on the road and I've done scoring. Now I need to get the others involved. I think he's still got to look for his shot, because when you do that, it just opens up the court for everyone else and you have that focus. And, potentially if you have Drew working overtime on somehow trying to manage between taking out CP and then also trying to slow down Booker on certain possessions, which is exactly what they did today, sorry. And so I would like to think CP comes back with a monster game. I feel much better with him at home doing that, but maybe they don't need that because the role players step up. Maybe you get 20 and 10 out of Aiton. Maybe you get 15 from Bridges and Johnson, and maybe you get, some better 3-point shooting from Crowder, because I know you spoke about his poor shooting from deep today, but he shot the piss out of the ball in game 3. I think he was 6 of 7 from deep and was one of the few shining lights along with Aiton before his foul trouble. So, man, I think that the best thing to come from this now as well is probably Phoenix know that it's on them. As much as Milwaukee were able to win it in the end, gosh, it's tough watching Milwaukee, and if you root for them, because every possession just seems just like a lottery, doesn't it? It almost seems like supporting. If you're a Bucks supporter, it must just be like death by 1,000 cuts. It's just brutal to sit through some of the momentum swings and missed opportunities. And gosh, I know you talk about Connaughton, and I obviously had him as the X factor in terms of seeing how his play was going to be needed for that small ball. And he still missed a couple of big threes, and there were certain spots where it was like, I don't know if I want Connaughton taking that sort of shot. And he missed 1 3, and I think the offensive rebound was kind of being fought for, and Aiton ended up grabbing it, but then someone tipped it from Aiton and it fell into Connaughton's hands. And rather than go up for the layup, he tried to dish it to someone, and Crowder just stole it straight away. Just sort of moments like that. It's like, oh gosh, it's almost reminiscent of obviously what we saw in game 2 when he had the ball on the perimeter and he just threw it to the other wing and Aiton was there to steal it. Like, just mind-boggling. Like, Pat, we don't need you to go up and try and dish it to someone thinking that the defense is going to drop to you. You're not Giannis. Like, be smart. If you're not confident to go into the paint, then kick it out to one of the 3 top guys, obviously a Giannis, Middleton, or Drew, and go back into the corner and get ready to spot up, because we don't need Pat Connaughton trying to play make, right? We just need him to just do simple stuff. And he hits a 3 and then he fouls Campaign on AM1. Like, there's so many things that kind of happen with the Pat Connaughton experience that, look, as much as he's a good player, he still has some just absolute head scratches. And look, in the end, credit to Milwaukee, because you still have to win as much as it is the potentially the Suns giving it away. They still had to come up with some big plays. And I think Middleton, other than a free throw or 2 free throws from Drew down the stretch, Middleton was the only scorer for Milwaukee in the final 2 minutes, which sort of outlines what you were talking about, Middleton's ability to close. And I think we obviously have to speak about, on top of Middleton, obviously doing a great job on the offensive end, that block from Giannis, right? That was right in the thick of that Middleton stretch. And it was 101-99. Middleton had just hit the jumper, and Giannis comes up with that play when it looked like for all money that he had gone up too high defending that obviously pick and roll, and it looked like the lob was going to be there. And gosh, how he can recover and then obviously use that athleticism to block. And it's not like Ayton was already dunking, the ball and Giannis came out just before the rim. Like Giannis and Ayton are almost at the top of the backboard, when Ayton's trying to catch it and Giannis is there to block it out. So that's phenomenal. That's not many players can do that. And so I know we potentially speak about how Giannis was fatigued, but 14 rebounds, 8 assists, like he was great. In terms of an all-round game, I think he was excellent.
3 steals, 2 blocks, gives you 8 assists with only 1 turnover. It was an MVP level game for him, and it felt like he didn't even get into, second or third gear. Yeah. He's really a marvel, Giannis. He is, the way he just picks up easy baskets off of his defense. He had a really crucial steal on an inbound play. That was another bad turnover from Phoenix, where he got that strip over Ayton's back and then went all the way for an easy jam.
Yeah.
When it looked like he was out of gas and he couldn't score the offensive end, he comes up with something on defense. It's truly special. I think people will definitely remember that big block. He's showed his versatility. Booker was cooking them. He gave Booker a little hedge, a little step, dared him to throw the alley-oop pass, and when he threw it, Giannis gave absolutely everything and just got barely a fingertip on it, enough to block a 7-footer like Ayton at the rim. It was absolutely special. And once it turns to Game 5 in Phoenix, I think we're going to have to see, and we will see, the Giannis that we saw in Game 2 and in Game 3, him completely dominating the offensive flow and then running a lot of action through him, particularly to try to test the Phoenix bigs and get them in more foul trouble. I think that's absolutely Achilles' heel and the key for them. If they're able to do that, then they can be the first team to get a win on the road in this series. I think that's a massive part of it. And, Giannis he's one of the fittest guys in the league. And we talked about his injury that he carried from the end of the Atlanta series. He's still getting it done. And to me, he's as likely as anyone. And he's the reason that I picked him to win the series in 6, the Bucks, because I think that so far he has been the best player basically in every game. He looks like the MVP of the series so far. So a big, potentially career-defining game for Giannis in the next one. And it could be a thriller if Chris Paul comes to play and puts on a good performance. I think we're going to be in for a really tight series. I think this has been one of probably the best series to watch so far in the playoffs, not only because of the stakes, but how evenly matched the two teams are and how it's foreign territory for both of them to be in this bigger moment, and the performances that we're getting from some of their stars. It's just a reminder of just how deep this league is and how good some of the basketball is at this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to sort of further to your point, I'd love to see if Giannis's free throw shooting from Game 3 can take him over, and because it obviously gave him confidence when the fact he was drawing all those fouls and he was hitting them. I think he was 13 or 17 in the end from the line. And I guarantee you, look, I obviously think he's a lot mentally tougher than a guy like Ben Simmons, but it does play a part. Giannis clearly seems like he's been able to deal with that better. The fact that he's not hitting free throws at a good rate, he still attacks. Like, how many threes did he attempt today and in Game 3? Hardly any, right? Might have been 2 or 3 in each.
Yeah, two.
That's what you want. No more than that.
Well, there's no doubt he's not scared of going to the basket, and he's going to continue to do it all game long. You can rely on him for minutes. You can rely on him for rebounding. And whenever it's loose play or a fast break, you can pretty much guarantee it's 2 points. So, yeah, he's not scared at the moment. He's not scared of going to the free throw line, even in the fourth quarter when it's under the pressure. So, just that mentality makes it a lot easier for their team to trust him in the big moments. I still think, when you need one big shot, a guy one-on-one situation, it's going to be Middleton. But there's no doubt that Giannis is going to be the guy to get them to that moment for sure.
Yeah, so that obviously leads into a pretty crucial game 5, which is what you're saying. I know a lot of people who've sort of been talking with you and I and been in the DMs as well have been pretty confident about Phoenix. There haven't been too many people giving Milwaukee a chance. And, obviously you and I knew Milwaukee and just how hard they are to beat at home, no matter, sort of how many flaws they have. And yes, you might hate Bud and all of these sort of things you might have against them, but Milwaukee are such a tough beat in that building. And you see the what do they call it? The bit outside, Deer District. That's it. So
going crazy.
Reminds me very much of what they do in Toronto, right? With the whatever they call that. Jurassic Park. Thank you. There you go. So, now it's, and the reason why I kind of feel like the pressure's back on Phoenix to sort of speak about the point before Dust is I think Milwaukee have some serious wild cards, and the fact that if Lopez shows up and gives you 15 to 20, what if Portis shows up and gives you double digits like he did in game 3? I thought it was pretty good, 11 and 8 off the bench. Didn't do too much today, but he didn't need to. I mean, still had a good block against Campaign when he was driving to the rim and doing his crazy eyes, and was still pretty active anyway. The fact that he wasn't impacting on the scoreboard.
When he's out there, Portis, their best shot is their best offense rather is a missed shot, because him and Giannis on the glass, they're just too physical.
And Tucker,
and Tucker coming in from the wing, or Connaughton, it's really showing at times, that Phoenix are a little bit too small, even though Ayton pulls down 17 D boards, Crowder is getting through a lot of work and having to guard some guys who are a lot taller than him.
Yeah. So game 5 is, I think it's Sunday, or Saturday. There's a 3 or 4 day break between 4 and 5, if that's correct. So I'm not actually sure who that favors.
It's Sunday, and I think it favors Milwaukee because they're the team that looked a little bit more tired to me. Okay. It might favor a guy like Chris Paul, who's certainly got a lot of miles on his legs. The oldest player in the series, who's an integral part of what's going on. So that'll be key for Paul. But I think Milwaukee, and to get Giannis a little bit more rest for him to come out and attack this game 5 is absolutely crucial. You spoke about how they could be a little bit better with Lopez playing a little bit better. I think for them to put the whole performance together, it's got to be Holiday. If Holiday can put up any kind of performance like he did in game 3 when he was really awesome, 21 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds, he was all over the court and hitting 4 out of 5 threes. So if you get a performance from that Holiday, and Middleton looks like he's in a groove right now, and we know we're going to get from Giannis, you better fear the Deer, because they're coming for it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was pretty confident this whole series it was not going to be an easy out. I obviously said 7, you said Bucks in 6. So none of this is a surprise to either of us. I think we expect, the series to be tied heading into game 5, and that's what we've got. So now that, things are heading into a 3-game series like we just spoke about, you can expect us and I to do pods after game 5 and then after game 6, and then if it goes game 7, because if we wait a couple of games and then do a pod, there'll be too much to go down. So now it's a 3-game series. It really heats up. If you haven't already enjoyed this series like Das and I have, these next 3 games will be awesome. Game 5 could be an all-timer. So
Sunday our time.
So thanks for that. So that'll obviously be something to look forward to as, sort of the more exhibition games in the lead up to the Olympics takes place in between. So unless there's anything else to touch on with either game 3 or 4 that we didn't hit on, Das, did you want to speak about those exhibition games that took place?
Oh, absolutely. If anyone's been keyed into what's happening in Las Vegas, there's 4 or 5 of the best teams going into the Olympics are playing a bit of a warm-up tournament there, and the Aussies are getting some really good reps in right now, and they've gone 3-0 so far. They had a real tight game against Argentina, who have got some, they're a team that's done very well in the FIBA World Cup very recently. They only came second. Your boy Louis Scola, we weren't sure if he was going to play.
Amazing.
He comes out and torches Australia, leading the game in scoring for 23 points or something. He's just ageless, the man. They got Campazzo out there playing some good basketball as well, and Gabriel Dech from the Oklahoma City Thunder. He didn't do too much in that game, but it was Patty Mills coming through for us. He showed why he's been such an amazing player for the for the Boomers in the last decade. He's everything that you want out of a player, and he really transformed into an offensive stud for the Boomers because it doesn't seem like anyone can guard him. He hits a big game winner, with only 3 seconds to go. They do an inbound handoff and he hits a all-net game winner to beat Argentina. Flip that over into the next night. We're playing against the best in the world, playing against the US team who they're only just been getting together. But, we showed just how much our Australian Boomers squad that we've got right now, led by Mills, they've got character and they've got continuity and they've got chemistry together, and it just showed in that fourth quarter. We absolutely cut away from them, led by Patty Mills making some big shots over Kevin Durant. So, what more can you say? Really, really good stuff in the warm-ups from us. We're very confident, and I'm very confident that we're definitely going to be bringing home a medal. Whether it's gold or not, we'll see. But, I only see a couple of teams that can really hang with us if we're playing our best ball, and we seem to be in a good rhythm right now.
Yeah, and then you didn't even mention, obviously, the third game, right, against Nigeria, where, look, it was always going to be an interesting game because Nigeria and Australia are obviously in the same group in the Olympics. So a little bit of, gameplay there with not wanting to give away too much.
Yeah.
Gamesmanship. So I don't know if Nigeria really played that hard or really gave away too much of how they like to operate. But the Boomers obviously rested, Delhi, Ingles, Mills, Baines didn't play, but that's more because he was injured. I think I would have liked more Baines minutes because I think he kind of needs it at the moment. I haven't been super impressed with him. I think he's been the worst big out of obviously Landale, Kay, and even Duop Reith, who I had no idea about. You knew more about him than me. Well, maybe we both didn't know much about him. I thought you knew more about him, but he's been pretty active, and every so often you see him out top of the key, and he's not really forcing it. But if the shot's there and he's going to have someone lay off him, he seems to be able to knock down a nice shot, and he's active around the rim and seems to play solid defense, and that's all you can really ask from a guy who's predominantly going to play spot minutes. And if we really get in some serious foul trouble with a lot of the main guys, then he could see extended minutes. But it's nice to know he's not a Derek and not a JaVale McGee, and you can kind of trust him. So it does bring confidence to any Australian out there, knowing that the group we have is a really competitive one, and they seem to be just clicking in terms of how they like to play, and the defense is almost one of the more impressive things that you can kind of speak about. And I know everyone's probably dying to speak about the man, and all you have to say is Matisse Thybulle, and people
they call me Teeth.
People now are just starting to see, if you obviously didn't tune into or haven't been able to see many Philly games over the past 2 years since we drafted the guy, this is what he does every game. He comes in and he's made how much chaos does he create as soon as he's on the floor, just defensively. Even if you get a shot away over Matisse, it's not easy. It's not a clean look. It's crazy.
20 jump shots does he block? It's uncanny.
It's something the Boomers have obviously never had before, but to Matisse's extent, he's almost a different animal. He'll come in and make a defensive play right away, and he's obviously got the athleticism to get out and run and also get some dunks. But as a Philly fan, the thing that we don't see too much that he's been able to display so far for the Boomers in this exhibition is the shooting. You've got it, Darcy. Right. He's been making a lot of those corner threes, and I think he hit a nice step back or something off the dribble against Draymond or someone against USA. And it's like, if this Matisse comes back to Philly, like he's almost got to be in contention to fit him into the starting lineup if we don't bring Danny Green back, because it's probably the only real flaw of his offensive game that you can think of at the moment in terms of what would really make him an outstanding player. But yeah, I think that the impact has been felt by that Boomers squad. He does something every possession, and he's active, and he knows where to be in the right spots. And you even saw him bloody play make a little bit out of the pick and roll against Nigeria, which was great to see. I think early in the first quarter, he was a ball handler, and he got a screen from Landale, and he found Landale for an and one. And it was just like, I don't want to say it as a Philly fan, but it almost puts him in untouchable category in terms of trades. But he's only helping himself. And, I think there's probably fair sort of fair push for him to be a starter. I don't know how you feel about it and potentially whose expense that would be, because there's so far, I know what he brings in terms of effort and defensive intensity, but I haven't been that impressed with Delhi. How do you sort of feel about him?
I think Gorgon has used him the right way so far, because this team has been built over the past, I think it's 4 or 5 international tournaments that we've played together. And the lineup has been with Delhi, with Mills, with Ingles. And it's obvious, probably the main reason that we got the victories in these 3 warm-up games is because these guys are coming back into a familiar situation. And even though we've changed coach from Lamanis over to Brian Gorgon, we've got the same assistant coach. You know, we've got Cape Horn, who's obviously a smart basketball head and understands exactly the way that this group has been playing together and has had success, because the offense, the way they're moving the ball, the way they're recognizing not only have we got shooters coming off screens, but where to utilize where the defense helps too hard. We're getting a lot of nice rolls to the basket and really crisp ball movement. So, you know, that's a credit to our continuity in general, but to step it up another level with bringing in a guy like Matisse Thybulle, it makes our defense extremely tough. You know, the way that we were able to shut down such a potent offensive team like the US in clutch situation was really, really impressive and encouraging. I think when you talk about the starting lineup for the team, I think you potentially lose a bit of Delhi when you bring him to the bench. And, you know, something that can be a bit frustrating watching Delhi is his lack of offensive potency. He can't really score the ball at this level, but having said that, he can still hit an open shot. He can hit a nice floater. But what he does do is get the offense running. He plays, you know, a very NBL point guard kind of role, similar to a guy like Mitch Norton. He will defend the whole game, dog the other point guard full court. He'll get us into our sets, get the ball into Mills's hands off of screens, you know, feed the guys in the post, particularly Baines. I like to do that the first 5 minutes of the game, try to test the other team's big man. So, you know, I feel like we're in a good situation, and Gorgon did a really good job of bringing Thybulle in with lineups that were very quick. And, you know, overall, we looked really outstanding defensively when he was out there. And I thought a big moment for Thybulle was when he blocked Durant in the one-on-one situation where Durant goes into the middle, goes into his kind of fade away on a jump shot, and no one blocks Durant on that. And he was able to get his left hand up there and block it. It was pretty outstanding. And Thybulle's definitely a big guy to watch for Philly, because what a great pickup for them, because he's obviously improved quite a lot, and no doubt he'll gain a lot of confidence the way that he's playing offensively for the Boomers, and he's definitely going to have a huge role. I think when you look down the rest of the Boomers roster, a guy like Dante Exum, every bucket we get from him, every time he's able to drive to the basket and give us something, is a huge boost. You know, I'm not certain that we can rely on him necessarily when it gets to the toughest games of the tournament. You know, he hasn't played a lot of basketball. It's tough to put that trust in him, but everything we get from him is a bonus. And something that's been amazing in the first 3 games is the shooting of Chris Goulding. You know, there's a reason that he's MVP of the finals in the NBL at times, and he's almost clearly been, you know, the best shooter outside of probably Bryce Cotton in the league for the last 5 years. He's as good a shooter as in the world, not just in the NBL. He could stroke it with the best of them in the NBA. Chris Goulding. So see him go for a 7 of 7 from 3 game against Nigeria. You know, that's light work for him, and he was a big part of our campaign at the World Cup, and I think he will be as well in Tokyo. Kind of with the struggles of Baines, I think Landale is looking in great form, and he's looking really fit too. I think he's moving around the floor really well and rebounding the ball well. So, you know, without getting too far ahead of ourselves, we've got a lot of guys in good form, and it feels like we know our identity and we know what we're trying to get done at Tokyo. So I think in terms of a runway into the Olympics, I think we're probably going as well as anyone, and probably pretty close to favorite for that gold medal.
Yeah, you know, the 2 things you touched on that really stand out for me is it feels like it's only a matter of when, not if, a guy like Jock Landale gets an NBA opportunity. It feels like that's close and around the corner, and it's certainly, you know, they've spoken about it on broadcasts, and it's been known.
How much would Phoenix Suns like some Jock Landale off the bench right now?
A lot, yeah, absolutely.
Instead of Kaminsky.
A lot, yeah. anything. It doesn't even have to be Jock Landale. Anything but Kaminsky. They would, and a lot of people have spoken about, the Phoenix and what they did with the 10 pick, or was it the 11th pick, whatever they had in the draft, and they took Jalen Smith out of Maryland, who obviously turned out to be a guy that isn't playable at the moment, which is obviously disappointing given Phoenix potentially a year ahead of where they thought they'd be.
He must be crap at training. He must not be playing well in the scrimmages or something, because he can't even get a minute. Like, he can't even get a minute in a game like this. So
Kaminsky must love like shoot arounds and trainings and any sort of thing, because he must be able to dominate Jalen Smith, because that's got to be the only reason he's ahead of him on the depth chart, because it is very mind-boggling, as you say. He's got to be so bad in any sort of scrimmages they have at the practice facility. So
should have kept Baines.
Well, that's it. That's
a way to keep him.
That's obviously the best version, the best NBA version of Baines we've seen was his time with Phoenix. And people forget last season, right, with Ayton, how he had the PED suspension, so missed a good chunk of games, and obviously Baines stepped in as the starter, and ridiculous. His 3-point shooting was obviously a career high, and he was just shooting the crap out of the ball. And that's obviously who Toronto thought they were getting, but we don't need to sort of go down that rabbit hole that we have many times. And I suppose as well as Landale, it feels like Goulding is at least an NBA shooter. Like, I feel like he's got to be given a chance. I know he's played summer league in the past, and it might have even been with Dallas.
Mate, we know talent in Dallas. We know good talent.
Well, why didn't you bring him on? You got Brokov and gave him a run. You couldn't give Goulding a run?
That's a good question. I have to, contact Mark Cuban and ask him about that. But there is a good young player who showed something in the games against Nigeria. Josh Green showed that he's an NBA athlete. And we should say something about Josh Giddey, because he took over the reins when Delhi didn't play in that game 3 and did a really admirable job. He showed that he could shoot the ball from 3. He showed that, in the pick and roll, he's able to make good decisions and made a couple of nice finishes at the basket. So for an 18-year-old kid to be playing, at a high level against a Nigerian team that, just knocked off Argentina and the US only, 2 days before, Giddey definitely held his own and played at a really high level. So that was quite impressive. And you definitely saw flashes of what the Mavericks thought they were getting in Josh Green as a 3-and-D player, because he really gets in the passing lanes well. He's fast out in transition, obviously can finish up above the rim, and he showed some touch from the 3-point line, which is impressive. So there will be a moment in the Olympics where I think he might get a bit of an important run. It might only be a short time on the court, but an important part of the game where he might come in to defensively lock down and give us a bit of energy. And with him and Thibault out on the floor, that really gives us more athleticism that we haven't necessarily had in previous runs at World Championships and World Cups. So hopefully it can turn into a confidence booster for him, and he might have a bit more of a role in the Mavs next season.
Yeah, no, Josh Green was good, very impressive. It's be interesting to see how this sort of World Cup experience can help elevate him, similar to what you're saying with Thibault, and go back to the NBA. And I don't know if the Mavs would have put him in Summer League, but it makes sense that they probably would have put him in Summer League anyway if he wasn't playing in the Olympics. So, it'd be interesting to see the role he plays in, and he really gets a fresh start, because he's not now potentially with, Rick Carlisle. He's with Jason Kidd now. So sort of a new perspective, and gets a good opportunity to come in and make an impact.
I can understand why Giddey didn't necessarily make the Australian team, and probably why Green didn't see the floor much in the first couple of games. These kids are still very young. They're kids, they're 18 years old. And when it comes to the Olympics and playing for the national team, it's a very physical game. It's a man's game. Even a guy like Dante Exum, who due to injury, hasn't had a lot of experience in it, he can get shoved around, can get pushed around, looks a bit, on edge there, as opposed to these absolute men who are built and are extremely physical and get under your skin. That's just the nature of the FIBA game. So you're right. Absolutely great exposure for these guys, and really good learning moments for them. And I really enjoyed what I've seen so far from this tournament. I know we get another chance at playing the USA, I think, before we actually go to Tokyo. So that'll definitely be one to watch.
I'd play Giddey in that game. Yeah, I think you've already done what you've needed to do in that first matchup. And the Bleacher Report draft guy, I think his name's Jonathan Wasserman or something like that. I saw he tweeted out a lot of scouts in the building, obviously for that was a big weekend in Vegas, obviously with the UFC fight and all of that. Anyway, going on, there was a lot happening, but there was a lot of scouts.
WNBA All-Star game.
You're right
as well.
So a lot going down. Vegas sort of been the place to be over this last week to 10 days, and obviously a lot of scouts in the building, and obviously that performance against Nigeria only helped Giddy's stock. So potentially he might see himself by the time draft comes around, which is 2 weeks away, 29th of July. That might push him into that top 10 range, which is great, because I know we spoke about in another pod that he was looking somewhere between the 10 to 20 range. So if he can push himself in that the late 8, 9, 10 range, that'd be pretty sweet, and hopefully he can end up in a good spot. And I think I would have liked to see him on this roster. I would have liked to see, because what's a guy like Sobey going to bring? I know you're going to probably say, he's, whatever, veteran and could score at will in the NBL.
Scoring.
He's looked so out of place, Dus. Whenever he's seen the court, I know he scored and played a little bit better against Nigeria, but I mean, in a 40-point blowout, everyone was looking good on the Boomers. Like you could have put, Brian Goorjian himself on the court, and I'm sure he would have been able to get some buckets. So it's interesting, but I would rather Giddey, because he's a guy that, you can give the ball to, and he can create out of many different opportunities. And it's not just a score first mentality that he has. And it's scary when you see him on the floor and you're like, holy shit, he's a legit 6'8". Like he is very tall.
He's tall.
He's a big boy. So, and the fact that Sobey if his main thing is, he's going to come on and bring stability to the offense and potentially give you a nice little spark, because he does have good bounce. I know he is athletic, but it does. When he got minutes, in particular against Argentina and the US, he couldn't have looked further out of place. Like he looked like a deer in headlights. And how can he be rusty when he's just played an NBL season? So I just think the moment's too big for him. I don't think he'll be able to contribute. I could eat my words. These could be very famous last words, and he could come and play a pivotal role in, a quarter for the Boomers in a pivotal, group match, or even a quarters or a semis. But I can't see it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I can't see it with Sobey. It's confusing. Give Giddey a go. Like everyone realizes he's a talent, and he's perfect for FIBA. He can operate in many pick and rolls, and he can make the right pass, and seems to obviously have a good enough decision-making process to not be too sloppy. But I do get that he will probably he would have been probably attacked defensively, but with how the FIBA rules are, and, there's no three in the key, and, guys can just sit in the paint, you can get away with all of that stuff. And I think the Boomers have enough defense as well in their roster that they could potentially cover off for the fact that Giddey's not the best on that side of the ball.
I think you're right that our defense could handle him on the roster. I think we're just looking for potentially what the ceiling might be for those minutes, because we're talking about the third string point guard. It's obvious that they've given Dante that responsibility as the backup. So when Delhi's off the floor, the ball handling, bringing the ball to the court, that's your job, Dante. Guard the other team's point guard, that's your job. If you can get into the paint, that's huge for us. That's the next factor. And when you move down to the third string, we're talking about minutes at, midway to the end of the second quarter, and potentially, if we're doing well, maybe at the start of the fourth for a minute or two. Now, I think in that small amount of time, Sobey can potentially get you a bucket. He can get something in transition. He's more likely on a wide open three. He's got the speed and athleticism to potentially pounce on an opportunity. Giddey, he's the type of player similar in some ways to a guy like LaMelo Ball. He has the ball in his hand the whole game. You start him as the point guard. He gets a feel for the game. That's when he's able to drop 6-7 assists, start to pick the defense off, pick up defensive rebounds with his length, and kind of feel his way into the game. I guess he's not necessarily the type of player who comes on for 2 minutes and can be a spark plug. I think that's what they see in Sobey in his role. He's second leading scorer in the NBL. He averaged almost 20 points a game. So there's basically no one in the league that could guard him. He's got that athleticism to get his shot off basically against anyone. I think when you're looking at your third string point guard, that's what you're thinking about. And what you're hoping to get is, a quick run of points, a quick flurry, a little Lou Will, 2 minutes, 8 points kind of thing.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we'll have to keep an eye out for it, because I just haven't been impressed with what I've seen from Sobey so far. I mean, if you want to sort of, I think he's a guy that's had.
He looked rusty. He looked rusty.
But that makes no sense to me, Das. How can you be rusty when you've just played in the NBL? Like, you've just played.
He's used to being a starter and playing the whole game, and now he rides the bench the whole time and comes on for 2 minutes, and you're being full court guarded by, I don't know, who the US got. Like Zach LaVine was picking guys up full court. That looked pretty difficult to get the ball up against. But it's not going to be easy at the World Cup. And I thought that he probably could have got a bit more burn at the last World Championships, because he was the 11th and 12th man in the Boomers squad last time around. So he didn't really get much of a burn in that one. So maybe he won't be doing it again in this one. Goorjian might not trust him that much, but we'll just have to wait and see. You know, if we can get out to some big leads early in games or in the pool games, if we're able to stretch a lead against Nigeria or who's the other team, Germany in our pool, if we can get out to a bit of a lead, maybe he's a guy who can extend it for us.
Yeah, that's that last group game, that last exhibition game that we just saw with Nigeria and Australia. That's not the Nigeria I watched against both the US and Argentina. That was different. Even if you want to look at who they started Okafor, right? And Precious Achiuwa just played bench minutes and wasn't super involved. And there wasn't a whole ton of Gabe Vincent. And Gabe Vincent, I messaged you after that US game. They were using him as the Patty Mills, coming off screens, having him as a guy that was really just there to score and shoot the crap out of the ball. And he did a great job with that. And, you know, in the end, potentially it could have been a combination of Nigeria playing well and the US still trying to figure their shit out, which seemed to carry over to when we played the US. So I think if Australia decides to play, you know, the starters, that suddenly makes it a very interesting second matchup that you spoke about it against the US. But it doesn't make sense for me to do that. At what cost? I mean, you've already shown that, you know, you can match it with him in that first game, and I'm sure the US will figure their stuff out. I know they've been pretty poor, but they will be better. People are pretty easy to lay on them. And look, while it may have been a historic defeat to both Nigeria and us, that they've got too many guys. Like, they're still missing a Holiday, a Middleton, a Booker to come back in, and they'll be good.
2 40-point scorers from today in the NBA Finals coming to ride their bench, probably. You know, that's just how deep these guys are. I think, you know, what I was messaging you when this US team came out, think about the best basketball you could see out of a lineup with Durant and Lillard, you know, Booker, Holiday, along with a guy like Draymond. Though they're a bit small, you know, they've got a lot of wing defense in that lineup, and extremely good amount of shooting. And if they're moving the ball and playing together as a team, that's a very potent offense that, you know, any team should rightfully be scared of. Yeah.
And interesting that the guy they seem to move to and start was Draymond, right? They put Adebayo to the bench for seeming to want a bit of passion, a bit of energy. Bam can kind of just go in and out of games, which is obviously the thing that can sometimes be frustrating. You need that energy.
A lot of people definitely, I thought, overrated. I don't want to say overrated, but got a little bit excited about just how good Bam Adebayo was in that run to the finals last year, because the truth is he got completely and utterly outplayed in the finals by Anthony Davis and the likes of Dwight Howard, and just the overall size of the Lakers. He was really, you know, shown that he doesn't have a complete all-round game just yet, although he's a very serviceable player with obviously some extreme upside as well. He's not complete all the way around, and you're right about sometimes doesn't necessarily seem like he's going 100%. And I think probably the thing that translates best from any of the NBA players to the FIBA game is what Draymond brings, is that constant defensive energy, that willingness, and, you know, the need to push the ball in transition, get it down there quickly and play aggressive. You know, I think he's more so the captain of this team in the way that he's driving them and leading them.
Yeah, and it was also great to see that a lot of those guys were struggling to find rhythm because they were like, oh, wait, I'm not getting that call. Like Tatum, Beal, they seem to be a lot of, you know, stopping and looking at the ref being like, dude, it's like, no, mate, this is not, you're not in Washington, you're not in Boston, this is not the NBA.
Yeah.
Like, FIBA, obviously, we're not going to give you that BS. Like Kevin Love came on and he does his normal like pump fake and tried to like get it. It was like, absolutely not.
What about those rumors about Kevin Love and Sexton in a deal for Ben Simmons? That's just a slap in the face. How
Don't get me
could Philly
started. Don't get me
possibly
started.
consider that? That's dreadful.
I think there's obviously a bit of leaking going on with that side of things to try and bring down his value. So there'll be a perception league wide. There's always stuff going on with that. I saw there was a report as well. Last time we'll speak about Ben Simmons because
Can you imagine how good the Australian team would be?
He wouldn't help.
Don't tempt us.
Not this
defensively.
No.
Defensively, I don't know if anyone could score on us with those two.
Would you have enough offense if you had Ben and Thibault on the court at the same time?
You'd find a way to make it work. Maybe you stagger them and then just put them together when you need a defensive run because, you throw Joe Ingles in there, versatility of a guy like him. Maybe Josh Green in that lineup as well starts to look pretty athletic.
Yeah. I mean, just Ben's mentality at the moment seems to be off. Like pictures of him at Wimbledon and whatever. Look, he's allowed to have a break. That's fine. He's allowed to enjoy his off season, but maybe don't be so public with his new girlfriend out in freaking Wimbledon watching games while the Boomers are in exhibitions, and Philly fans are still pretty distraught about his Atlanta series performance. So even if you're going to do that, just don't be at like one of the biggest sporting events in the world. So that would be my advice, but Ben can do what he likes as far as I'm concerned. I think it's a matter of when, not if, Simmons gets dealed. I'll be flabbergasted, Das, if he's on the roster come opening game of the 2021-2022.
Really? I think you might have to wait a bit longer before teams reconsider how much they have to give up for him, because the longer it goes, you watch the deals roll in and, you start next season and what are you coming back from? You're coming back from obviously a second round exit, but number one record in the league last year. It's the further detached we are from the season, it's, ultimately a failure in their own eyes because they want to win a championship. But, a lot of good things happen during the season.
Yeah, sure. I think it's just in the end, it's like as a Philly fan, you just wait for, trust the process, all this stuff, all the crap season
you could have been Milwaukee the last 2 years, and look where they are now. Look at that script's flipped. Yeah. No one wanted to be a Bucks fan after the bubble. Everyone was getting ready to sack them. Now look at the Deer District.
I know. It's just at the moment, it feels like the best chance we had was that group with obviously Jimmy and Redick and that game 7, obviously the Kawhi shot. It now looking back at it, it feels like that was a great shot for us. The Raptors one that we could have beat him. And whatever. Let's not go back into Sixers history and put me in a hole, Das. I'm trying to get pumped up with the basketball that's going on at the moment. And the thing that we'll probably finish up on, which I love, isn't it good that FIBA games, the last 5 minutes of a fourth quarter just goes through seamlessly and there's no, replays and reviews and timeouts, and the 5 minutes is normally pretty smooth, and we're not having to sit through, an hour of real time to just get through the last quarter of a game.
There's definitely some comfort in knowing that down the stretch of games, it's going to be physical, and there's going to be times where you make a strong drive to the basket and you get hammered and they're just going to let it go. There's times where the whistle is just not going to be given and you're going to have to find a way to get a bucket even if you're getting fouled. There's a certain comfort in that, that someone's not going to be gifted 2 free throws to win the game. So I suppose in that sense, the FIBA game is something different, and it's something to embrace and something to enjoy while it's here over the Olympics, because we're going to see definitely some free-flowing games, but also some elite shooting. The three-point line's coming a little bit. Saw the way that Nigeria shot the piss out of it against the US, and every time it feels like Patty Mills puts on this jersey, he's lighting it up for something special. He's, averages 25 points as opposed to the, modest 10 or 11 he averages for the Spurs. So interesting games to come up. And, if you're a really big basketball fan, make sure to check out some of the women as well when they take on USA. Those matchups in particular, you'll see some elite shooting as well.
Is that soon?
It's tomorrow. So tomorrow there's USA versus. That'll be Friday, and then when they're on in Tokyo as well, take a look. Big girl Cambage and the rest of the Opal squad. going up against, USA team who's won 4 Olympic golds in a row. So team to watch out for.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, that takes care of things. Yeah, unless there's similar to what I was mentioning before with Bucks Phoenix. Have I missed anything with these exhibition games that you wanted to touch on?
No, I don't think so. I think we're pretty much in on it. There hasn't been a Slovenia game for us to watch just yet, but if you do get a chance, that'll be one to watch. Can't wait to see what Luka does. He loves the FIBA game. He's a veteran of that, so
yeah,
more chances to watch good pure basketball with my boy 77.
Well, you can sort of see now, and I think people are starting to understand, right? You have one dominant ball handler that can do and create everything, and 4 guys around him that play hard. They're a threat. It's not necessarily, just looking straight at the US and defaulting to 5 guys on the floor that can do it all. Sometimes you just need 1 or 2, elite players and 3 or 4 that play their absolute arse off, which is what Slovenia will have. And anything's possible. I think if you don't think they've got a chance at getting out of their group, I know they've got Spain in it and someone else in their group. I can't think of
Argentina.
Okay, so they've got Argentina. If you don't think Slovenia has a good chance at getting out of the group, then I'm not sure you've been tuning into too many of their games, because they do have a shot. And I think they might kick off their campaign with a game against Spain in the group. So if they can get an early W to us, I think people will suddenly start to think, oh boy, like here comes Luka, and because he's grown up with the FIBA game, right? And I don't know, it's obvious, right? They play the FIBA game in Europe, don't they? So
he went to play with Real Madrid when he was 13 years old.
Yeah, you're right.
And won the EuroLeague with them and was Finals MVP. So you don't need much more of a resume to dominate the FIBA game than that.
No,
so can't wait to watch him. And shout out to Luka, the newest of I think 4 or 5 different cover athletes for all you gamers out there who are playing NBA 2K. Luke is on the cover, so make sure to snap that one up. Or if you're into the legends and you understand the history of the game, the GOAT Swish 41, he's also on one of the covers with Durant and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So check those out and add my gamer tag Darchens Emery when you're out there, and I'll see you guys in the neighborhood.
Are you good, Das?
I'm real good. Well, I was amazing at 2K20, so once I get my reps back up on 22, you better watch out.
Okay, so you heard it first. So by the man himself, straight from the horse's mouth, Darcy is a problem at 2K if anyone wants to match up against him. So as long as the internet's good and Das doesn't have an excuse to blame the lag, then I think he could be in for a quality entertainment coming up against Das there. So yeah, look, when we'll come back after game 5, as I said, sort of halfway through speaking about the NBA finals, we'll be back after each game now that takes place, because obviously down to best of 3 and first to 2 and see who can get it done there. So doesn't make sense to leave a big gap between coming back and reviewing it and talking shop and chatting about all the ball that's gone down. And then obviously the couple of exhibition games. So am I right in saying the Boomers just have 1 left or 2 left, and then they head to Tokyo?
I think we might have 2, but definitely US is next.
Okay, interesting. So anyway, all the games are on ESPN or on Foxtel or Kayo, wherever you watch them. So continue to keep tuning into that. And it's middle of next week, end of next week, that the actual Olympics kicks off, 24th, 23rd. It's something like that. So we'll be back anyway to do a pod between when the exhibition games finish and before the Olympics start, so we can basically roll all of this post-NBA stuff into the Olympics and do some pods after the Boomers games that takes place, and obviously have our Slovenia chat, being the second team that will adopt throughout the playoffs and throughout the Olympics, and we'll see how far we can go.
I like it. I like it
right.
a lot.
Beautiful. Okay.
What about prediction? You got a prediction for game 5? I assume you're taking Phoenix because you got them in 7?
I want to get wild and say the road teams win the next 2 games. I'm thinking, I know it'll be tough, but maybe the Bucks can do it in game 5 and take over that momentum. I mean, I could feel like a bit of a dummy, and CP fixes his sort of whatever bloody rhythm he's in, he can get back into his groove, and then Phoenix obviously take the 3-2 lead heading back to game 6. But I don't know. Let's see what happens. Let's get crazy. So I think Milwaukee win game 5, Phoenix win game 6, and we have a game 7. That's where I settle. I don't know. Look, anyone who can predict how Milwaukee's going to play and who's going to stand out other than Giannis, like, you're a fortune teller and you should be getting paid for what you do, because no one can. But that's probably where I'd sit with. Gun to my head, let's say Milwaukee 5, Phoenix 6, and let's have a play for it all in a game 7.
That would be wicked. It would, if 2 road wins were to happen now in the series, that would just make an epic series even more epic. It's really feeling like an absolute grudge match at the moment. It might be a bit of recency bias in terms of the momentum from that game, but I think Milwaukee will come and win it. They took a lot from that victory, doing it dirty, doing it the tough way, kind of battling through a 40-point epic from Booker and still getting the win. I think Giannis will be the best player, and I think they'll win game 5. But having said that, Phoenix have been amazing at home the whole playoffs, and their crowd will be raucous. Loving seeing the crowds. The big difference between the bubble, like, it's night and day, how much better the atmosphere is and how much more pressure the players are under. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. And which sort of furthers to the points we've spoken about in the past as well about the Olympics. I really do wonder how the no crowd thing will play its part in the fact that it's basically an Orlando bubble 2.0. What's going on in Tokyo with the players basically being with each other, and that's it. No real exposure to anything other than being in the hotel or going to get up shots in the gym or work out and eat together. So interesting. We'll see who that favors in the end. But yeah, obviously something to keep note, because that obviously the crowd plays a big part, especially in the Olympics. So obviously a lot to look forward to. But you heard it here. So Das and I both have Milwaukee taking game 5. So we'll see if we're geniuses or we're fools when we come back to do a recap of this. So thanks everyone for tuning in and listening. As always, we've had a few people slide into the DMs and tell us why, Phoenix are better, and Phoenix in 4 and maybe Phoenix in 5. And one person said max it's going to be 6. So, there's been a lot of changing minds here, and being able to really basically, say whatever they feel. And we love that. But, don't hesitate to throw out your thoughts or opinions. Das and I are always down to chat and tell you why you're wrong. So no, I'm kidding. But as always, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will speak to you then.
Stay safe, guys. Holiday out here.
No, you're shooting like Sobe, Das.
What about I'm shooting like PJ Tucker? Plays 35 minutes, gets 5 fouls, 0 points. One last try. Okay. We find a way.
There you go.
Peace out, guys.
See ya.